The world around us is revolving more and more around batteries. Meanwhile, the only one we have on board is a 37-year-old lead-acid battery bank that, together with some solar panels, still powers around 90% of this entire rebuild. But it's up for retirement. My name is Gijs, and this is my dad. And this is Schoener Tijgerhaai. 3 years ago, we started a major rebuild to get her ready for new adventures. And we're sharing the process with you. Subscribe to stay tuned. Since the installation of this thing in 1989, it has been the only source for 24 volts on the boat. For starting the main engine, navigational equipment, lights, and in the past 3 years also to power the inverter, giving us 230 volts AC for tools and galley equipment, since there is no shore power on this yard. It's an abnormally simple setup. The battery charges from the main engine's alternator, the solar panels, or from the battery charger when running the generator or when shore power is available. Turns out it has also been stupid reliable. Getting to the age of 37 and still working is almost unheard of for any type of battery. However, it seems not very redundant, relying on just one energy source. But there have also always been 2 diesel generators on board, mostly for 3-phase AC power. So if the battery ever went flat, it could always be charged. For today's standards, having just one battery on board is not normal on ships and yachts. And even camper vans have a separate house battery next to the starter battery for the engine. We were not planning to separate our power sources just yet. But during our Christmas holiday sea trial a month ago, on one of the 2-volt cells on our old 24-volt battery bank, the connection terminals just broke clean off. Without warning, from old age. Effectively separating our battery into a 14-volt and a 10-volt bank, just as we were about to start the engine. Finding why the lights went out and fixing the problem quick and dirty gave us only 1 hour delay on departure, but it highlighted that having just one battery as a source for everything also means nothing works if it breaks down. Coincidentally, last month, battery manufacturer Wattcycle reached out and offered to send me one of their best batteries to test, along with a discount code. They're not paying me to say anything nice about it, so I can review it honestly. Those 2 things made us shift the planning a little bit. This battery, with 8 kWh, contains about half the energy of our old battery bank, but in a way smaller package. It weighs about 70 kilograms, or 150 pounds. Where the old lead-acid bank is over 500 kilograms. It is a lithium battery, and I think I have a healthy fear of lithium batteries on boats. But after doing the proper research, it's easy to learn the do's and don'ts. In that regard, it's worth to mention there are many different types or chemistries of lithium batteries. This one is the lithium iron phosphate battery, or LFP. On the safety scale, it's all the way at the top, together with lithium titanium oxide. Both of these chemistries are extremely resistant to thermal runaway, which is the main risk people think of with other lithium batteries. As you can imagine, iron is much cheaper than titanium, so that goes for the batteries as well. Because of the high safety, the long life and the low price, LFP is currently the standard for new batteries on boats, and it's used more and more in electric cars, even though it's quite heavy, so the range of these cars is a bit less. I know some of you will say the 2 magic words, sodium ion. And yes, it is even safer, and probably also cheaper in the future. But right now, it is still pretty rare with very little mass production. Unfortunately, when the battery arrived, it had taken some noticeable damage during shipping. It looks like it was dropped on the side where the connection terminals are, and that gave it an ugly dent. They call this a smart battery. So, if you install the WattCycle app on your phone, you can connect to the battery management system via Bluetooth before even taking it out of the box. So I did that and nothing looked out of the ordinary. But what do I know? So I contacted WattCycle with that information and they assured me that the battery would function fine, even with the dent. Their standard policy is that after reporting the damage, you're allowed to remove the cover to check the internals without voiding the warranty. According to the manual, it has an IP67 dust and water resistance rating, and the top edge seems to be intact and not bent, but that's hard to check properly. We're gonna install it in a dry place anyway. Inside, you can clearly see that some stuff is a bit bent, but nothing seems broken. And according to the app, the cells are fine. Apart from opening and looking inside, there's not much we can do. You can see the similarities with our old battery bank. All the separate cells, with the positive and negative terminals of each cell visible. But other than that, to me, a cell just looks like a cell. I don't think you could simply replace a faulty one, but maybe it's possible, with the whole right to repair idea. There's a little circuit board here on the side, which is the BMS, the battery management system. Also, not much to see for the untrained eye. Even proberen. We're using very thick cables, not because it's strictly necessary, but because we have them laying around anyway. And oversizing a bit doesn't do any harm. However, the terminal covers that are supplied with the battery don't fully cover the big cable lugs that we are using. So I'm using some extra protection. Splitting the system from one battery into two batteries does make things a lot less simple, unfortunately. We used to have one single main switch to fully isolate the 24 volts battery from everything, except the solar charger, because we still want the batteries to charge when we're not on board. A second battery means we need an extra main switch, so I'm removing the old one to make space and clean up the cabling a bit. And instead of two switches, I'm installing 4. For the main 24 volts, a separate one for the solar charger, and one for the positive and for the negative of the main engine starter. We also still want to be able to charge both batteries with the main engine's alternator and with the solar panels and the shore supply. The easiest way to do that first thing is a DC-DC charger. We just connect that between the starter battery and the new LFP house battery. When the engine is running, and charging the starter battery, the DC-DC charger takes some of that power and converts it into the correct charging profile for the LFP battery. You need something like this because a lead-acid battery and an LFP battery have very different internal resistance and charging cycles. So the charger has to do some magic in between. Unfortunately, it does not work both ways. So to keep the starter battery topped up with solar or shore power, we need to install another charger. It could have been a second DC-DC charger wired the other way around, but since the solar inverter already makes AC, we can just use a small charger that goes in a regular power outlet. And that also works with shore power and generator power. You might have noticed all the blueness on that wall. All these chargers are from the same brand, Victron, and they all have Bluetooth. So with the Victron app, we can change the settings to match the watt cycle LFP charging characteristics. Except for the big one. For that, Victron wants you to buy some extra hardware and a computer program to get into the settings. Actually, they don't want you to buy it unless you're a professional. Now we have all that blue Victron stuff hanging here to charge a non-Victron battery. Victron is kind of the worldwide standard in this area, and they also make a blue battery that is almost the same capacity as this watt cycle. So that's worth a comparison. Obviously, I don't have an actual Victron LFP battery here, so we'll use the information available from Victron. The first thing that stands out is the price. A Victron 300 Ah 24 volts LFP battery is roughly double the price of this watt cycle, and not entirely without a reason. On paper, they look very similar. Same lithium chemistry, similar capacity and similar IP rating. And both can run big inverters and heavy loads. But Victron has decades of experience, and their batteries are really industrial and marine grade. Where they shine is in system integration. Their battery management systems can communicate directly with other Victron devices, and you can monitor everything remotely as one system. In our case, that would mean the big solar charger and inverter could take its instructions directly from the battery. But the two smaller chargers can't do this anyway. So regardless of the battery, you have to change the settings of those with your phone app. If you design your whole system from the ground up with Victron integration in mind, you can get much more out of a Victron battery. On the other hand, this watt cycle isn't some random budget battery. It has all the proper certifications for waterproofing, fire safety and cell quality. The BMS supports connecting a total of 8 batteries together, and it's built into the battery. With a Victron battery, you would have to buy that separately, and not for cheap. And honestly, after the shipping damage, I doubt Victron would have let me keep the battery, let alone open it. Watt cycle basically said, go ahead, open it up and have a look. So they're confident in the construction, and it also means that you can inspect and maybe even service things yourself, which Victron probably would not allow you to do. So in short, Victron is still the gold standard if you want deep system integration, long-term support and something that fits into a fully Victron designed marine system. Watt cycle gives you a lot of capacity, all the proper certifications and a solid BMS for a much lower price. And that is good enough for us. For now, we're keeping the old lead acid battery, just for starting the main engine. If it survived for 37 years, it might survive a couple more, even with our quick and dirty fix. We could replace it right now for 2 small 12 volt lead acid starter batteries in series, but those usually last only 3 to 5 years, so our old bank can probably beat that if we treat it gently. However, if something on the old bank breaks again, we still want to be able to start the main engine. So we're going to test a little emergency start procedure using the new LFP battery and some jumper cables. We are doing this with jumper cables instead of a changeover switch because it's only for emergencies. According to Watt Cycle's manual, the battery is not suitable for starting gasoline engines. It's a good thing we're running on diesel. But a standard old school alternator cannot just be used to charge an LFP battery. it would overheat because of the low internal battery resistance. If you do want that, you'd need to modify the alternator with a dedicated LFP voltage regulator, and those are more expensive than the solution we have now. The battery has a continuous output of 300 amps, and our starter motor is 5.5 kilowatts, which translates to 230 amps. However, to get the motor up to speed, the first couple of milliseconds the current can be 2 to 3 times as high. And the short burst inrush current of the battery isn't stated anywhere. So let's see what happens. To simulate a dead battery, I've drained the lead acid battery to around 20 volts. And it does not want to crank the main engine. The watt cycle is around 28 volts, so that will supply all the power to the starter motor. For a short period, having these two batteries parallel shouldn't be a problem, as long as we disconnect the cables as soon as the engine runs. Alright, that worked, giving us at least some extra reliability when we are out and about and the starter battery stops working, albeit at the cost of a bit of simplicity. We have already started working on the installation of our electric propulsion, but that's for the next video. And this is all for now. If you are curious about this or other watt cycle batteries, I have a 10% discount code, Tigershark Boatworks with no spaces, and it's linked in the description. And if you have any questions or remarks, feel free to let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.